Alright guys, the goal of this station is to interpret the poem Hope is a Thing with Feathers. We want to understand the rhyme scheme in each stanza and also the meaning or translation of each stanza. I will be scoring you on this third part where you translate a stanza on your own and identify the rhyme scheme on your own. So let's start by defining rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme of a poem is simply the pattern of rhyming lines in a poem. We'll look at how to do this when we read the poem together. When I refer to the speaker of a poem, that is simply the narrator of the poem. Sometimes the narrator is the actual writer of the poem, like in Sarah Kay's Bee, but sometimes the speaker is someone else. Let's get started with identifying the rhyme scheme. So we want to identify the rhyme scheme in stanza 1 first. So go ahead and point on your paper to stanza 1. This is the first section of the poem. To identify the rhyme scheme, you look at the last word in the line. So here we have feathers, soul, words, and all. If you can hear that any of these words rhyme, then there is a rhyme scheme in the stanza. So let's read these words together. Feathers, soul, words, all. Do any of those words rhyme? No, not really. Soul and all, kind of, but not really. So if none of the words are rhyming, then there actually is no rhyme scheme. We could call it an ABCD rhyme, and you'll see why in a minute. Let's move on to stanza 2. Let's look at the last word in each line in this stanza. We have heard, storm, bird, warm. There we have some rhyme scheme going on. So what you do then is you look again at the last word in each line. So here we have the word heard. The very first line, the last word in the first line, you're going to label with an A. You can also go ahead and highlight that in yellow so you have a visual. In the second line, our last word is storm. Does storm rhyme with heard? No. So this one gets a B. If the last word in the second line does not rhyme with the first, it's labeled B. If it did rhyme, it would be labeled A. So let's highlight this one in green. Next line. That could have bashed the little bird. Does bird rhyme with storm or heard? Yes, it rhymes with heard. Bird, heard, heard, bird, bird, heard. They rhyme. So since it's the same, you also highlight it in yellow and label it with an A. Next line. That kept so many, warm. Which word does warm rhyme with? Storm. So since it rhymes with storm, we're also going to highlight that in green and label it with a B. So what is our rhyme scheme here? You take these letters right here. It is A, B, A, B. This is a very common rhyme scheme. Okay, so when you get to the final activity, you're going to determine the rhyme scheme in this last stanza here. Next thing you need to do is translate each stanza. So what this means is just explaining the meaning. So what's important is understanding both the literal and the figurative meaning of the stanza. So go ahead and write these words down like I just did here, and I will explain what this means. All right, so if we go back to the poem, let's read stanza 1 together again. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. So what is literally happening here? So when I ask for the literal meaning, it means what is the speaker talking about? Well, it's pretty simple. She's talking about hope. So go ahead, we can highlight these important words. Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. So if you had to summarize this stanza, I would use these keywords here. Hope, feathers, soul, and sings. So we're going to summarize it by saying, hope has feathers and it sings in the soul. Go ahead and write that down next to the word literal, because this is what's literally happening. Now, what you can ask yourself is, can hope actually have feathers like a bird? And can hope sing? No, it cannot. So that's how we know there's something deeper going on. It's figurative language. Pause the video if you need to keep writing, because I'm going to continue on. Now, the figurative meaning. This is when we need to determine what is the deeper meaning. Okay, so you can write that down to remind yourself as well. What's the deeper meaning of the literal meaning? So we have hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. So we can use our keywords that we highlighted again. Hope, feathers, soul, and sings. When you ask yourself, what is the main idea of this stanza? We know it's something about hope. So what is Emily Dickinson saying about hope? If it is something that perches in the soul, so sits in the soul, and sings a tune and never stops at all, then she is saying hope goes on and never stops, like a song inside the soul. Okay, now there are many different meanings you could get from this stanza, but this is the one that I would get based off of our keywords. So go ahead and write that down. Pause the video if you need to, because I'm continuing on. Second stanza. As we read it again, I want you to think about what is literally happening. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. So literally it sounds like there's some kind of storm. So we already have that highlighted. I'm going to underline it because that seems like an important word. And the storm seems to, so abash is a word that means to mess with or destroy. So something about the storm abashing the little bird. But this bird kept so many people warm in spite of it. And it also seems to be like in the storm, its song is the sweetest. Okay, so let's look here in our translation. Literal is that hope sings in storms, but sometimes gets destroyed by it. Okay, so that is what is literally happening in this stanza. So I want you to think on your own and write down on your own what you think Emily Dickinson, our speaker, is trying to say about hope in this stanza. So hope sings in storms, but sometimes gets destroyed by it. So think about what you think these storms represent and how they can destroy this bird that represents hope. So you can start your sentence with hope is, and I want you to finish that sentence on your own. So go ahead and pause the video and finish that sentence. All right, and your last task once you've completed this sentence is to do this portion of the worksheet. So I want you to label both the literal and figurative meanings and fill them out, and also